The New Norm is brought to you by Winning at Home. I'm Steve Norman. Welcome to The New Norm. Recently, I had a chance to speak to a church about 1 Kings 19. This is a story of Elijah. And if you recall 1 Kings 18, Elijah has this mountaintop moment on Mount Carmel. He sees the entire nation led to the point of revival. It should be a really good day. He hears that Jezebel, the queen, is so enraged at what he has done to her prophets of Baal that she has ordered his execution. So he runs for his life, spends 40 days in the desert, and he has a really honest and candid conversation with God. And then God says this to him in 1 Kings 19, verse 15. Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. And when you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram, anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, over Israel, anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel-Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I have reserved 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and whose mouths have not kissed him. I love it. Elijah comes to God with this major complaint. He feels alone. He feels desperate. He feels afraid. God listens to him patiently and then says, go home, Elijah. It's as if he's saying, Elijah, it's time to stop wallowing, and it is time to move. And I think that sometimes God is saying the same thing to you and I, even in the midst of really hard seasons. Maybe God is saying to you and I in the midst of our most difficult moments, I understand that it's hard. Not everything is going to get resolved immediately the way that you want it to. But while you're waiting, it's time to get back in the game. And then God gives Elijah a very specific set of instructions for how to engage as he gets back to Damascus. The first instruction is that he crown kings. God says, identify people of influence and mobilize them for mission. Hazael is going to be the king of Israel's enemy, Aram, and God is going to use him to remove corrupt leaders from Israel. And Jehu is going to be the king of Israel. He's going to bring Jezebel to justice, and he's going to rid, at least for a season, Israel of Baal worship. Oswald Chambers says this, you never know when you will be the answer to somebody else's prayer. And I believe that just like there was for Elijah, there is for you a Hazael or a Jehu. There's someone in your immediate circle of influence who's going to advance the kingdom in ways that you can't yet imagine. And all he's waiting is for somebody to tell him that his life matters. Or all she needs to know is that her gifts count and that God's call on her life is real. So maybe your first prayer as you drive to your own personal Damascus is, Lord, show me who you are moving into positions of influence. The chances are is it's somebody that you weren't entirely expecting. But the truth is, you and I only are where we are now in our spiritual journeys because somebody else had a vision for what our life could be. So that first step is, God, show me how to crown the kings in my sphere of influence. Show me how I identify and mobilize people for the mission that you care about. The second instruction that God gives to Elijah is a reminder. Know that you're not alone. Like Elijah, some of us are exhausted just trying to hold the line. It feels like we're trying to swim upstream by displaying integrity at work or trying to live counter to the culture of purity at school. And we feel totally alone. And the temptation is to believe the lie, there's nobody else out there. But my friend Karen Hunter had a line on her refrigerator that says, don't believe everything you think. And God tells Elijah, I still have 7,000 people whose knees have not bowed and whose mouths haven't kissed Baal. It's God's gracious reminder to us in the midst of our pity parties that there are others who are in the same fight that we're in. And we need them. And they need us. So it's time to stop believing that you're the only one. Go find them, lock arms with them, stand with them, encourage them, receive encouragement from them. If the first prayer is, Lord, show me who you're moving me to influence, the second prayer should be, Lord, show me who to stand with. So crown kings. Remember that you're not alone. And then there's one more. 1 Kings 19, verses 19 to 21 says, Elijah went on from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him, and then Elisha left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. And then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. I love it. He kind of throws his own graduation barbecue. He throws a party for himself, and in the same breath, he kind of burns the bridges that would tempt him to go back to the life that he knew. And God's third command to Elijah before he leaves the mountain and goes back to the life that he knew is to give your cloak away. There was one person who was called by God that he wanted Elijah to invest in. God never asked Elijah to make a whole batch of disciples. He just asked for one. And in the span of 10 weeks, Elijah goes from wanting to die to the biggest leadership moment of his life. And that's not challenging political power. It's not calling down fire, but it's wrapping his cloak around his successor. In ancient times, to wrap your cloak around another person is to pass the baton. It's to invite a younger person, either chronologically or spiritually, onto the adventure. It wasn't, hey, Elisha, let's do a Bible study, but it was, hey, Elisha, it's time for you to be all in. I remember one of the first times I heard that invitation with crystal clarity. It was October of 1992. I was attending a church leadership conference. I kind of ditched 2 days of college classes, and in that moment, I heard a call to give my life, to leverage my gifts to advancing the kingdom. And in that season, that meant planting a church. So Elisha kisses his mother and father goodbye. He burns the plow. He cooks the oxen. He throws a party. Then he sets out to follow Elijah. We see this again when Jesus asks Peter and John to follow him, and they leave their nets. They leave their business. They leave the symbol of their vocation and calling behind to be a part of the adventure that Jesus has them on. So if your first prayer is, God, who do you want me to influence? And the second prayer is, God, who do you want me to stand with? Then the third prayer should be, Lord, show me who needs my cloak. God, show me the one person, maybe in my family or in my neighborhood or at my golf club or in my pickleball league, that you want me to focus intentional spiritual investment on. And then there's a postscript to this story. What's the one reason that Elijah ran away? Well, he was afraid for his life. In years after hiding at Horeb, we see a different Elijah. We see a bold leader who is giving his life away. Both Elijah and Elisha know that they are nearing the end of the run. In fact, Elisha hears from two different companies of prophets that this is the day that God is going to take Elijah from him. And we read that story in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 10 through 12. It says, as they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Think about this for a moment. After all of Elijah's panic, and all of his hand-wringing, and all of his running, and all of his fear of death at Jezebel's hand, the story ends with Elijah miraculously being taken to heaven without ever dying at all. His greatest fear was never, ever realized. And in the ultimate dramatic twist, how does God take him? Remember, back in the mountain, there was a wind, and there was a fire, and there was an earthquake, but God wasn't in any of those. He only showed up in the whisper. And typically when people die, they die quietly. But in this instance, God doesn't take Elijah with a whisper. He speaks through a fire and a whirlwind as if to say, Elijah, I always had it ending like this. Aren't you glad you stuck it out? I'm fairly certain he was. And you will be too. So come out of your cave, that hole that you've been hiding in. We've got work to do. If you've been enjoying these episodes of The New Norm, please do me a favor. If you could rate it, Give it a review and subscribe to the show. It'll help other like-minded people find it. And remember, The New Norm is produced and distributed by Winning at Home. Winning at Home is a faith-based nonprofit committed to making individuals, couples, families, and businesses stronger through counseling and coaching. For more information, go to winningathome.com. I'm your host, Steve Norman. Thanks for listening.